Good evening, dear listeners. As the day gently folds into night and the world outside your window settles into a tranquil hush, I invite you to take a deep breath and let the soothing cadence of my voice guide you into a state of serene relaxation. Tonight, we embark on a journey through time, exploring a topic that may seem mundane at first glance but holds a quiet charm and an unexpected depth: the dull history of medieval castle kitchen inventory management. Imagine, if you will, the flickering glow of candlelight illuminating the stone walls of a grand castle kitchen. The air is filled with the gentle sounds of simmering pots and the soft rustle of herbs being prepared for a feast. Here in this ancient space, a dedicated team of cooks and servants work tirelessly to manage not only the preparation of meals but also the intricate inventory of ingredients that sustain the castle's inhabitants. As we delve into this seemingly trivial aspect of medieval life, allow yourself to drift into a calming state, where the stresses of the modern world melt away. We will explore the daily rhythms of the castle kitchen, the roles of various individuals, and the meticulous record-keeping that ensured no ingredient was wasted and no meal went unprepared. You'll learn about the types of food that graced the tables of nobility and how the kitchen staff navigated the challenges of sourcing and preserving these provisions. Throughout our journey, we will uncover the methods employed to track inventory, the seasonal cycles of food procurement, and the art of preserving perishable goods, all while painting a vivid picture of this important yet often overlooked aspect of medieval life. Close your eyes and picture a sprawling castle, complete with its imposing stone walls and lush gardens. You can almost hear the clattering of pots and the soft whispers of servants as they go about their tasks. You might imagine the fragrant aroma of freshly baked bread wafting through the air, mingling with the scent of herbs and spices that were once rare luxuries. Each day in the castle kitchen was a delicate dance of organization and efficiency, where even the dullest tasks contributed to the vibrancy of life within the castle walls. As we progress through this narrative, I encourage you to let your mind wander, to embrace the gentle ebb and flow of history, and to allow the quiet details to soothe you into a deeper state of relaxation. The rhythms of the past may just carry you softly into your own dreams, far removed from the chaos of modernity. So, dear listener, prepare yourself for this tranquil exploration into the dull yet fascinating world of medieval castle kitchen inventory management. Allow the gentle whispers of history to cradle you in comfort and ease, as we turn the pages of time together. And now, let us step into the heart of the castle kitchen, where the flickering light and the promise of nourishment await. In this sanctuary of sustenance, we will unravel the threads of history that bind us to those who came before, embarking on a soothing journey that invites rest and reflection. Let us begin. The history of medieval castle kitchen inventory management is a subject of considerable obscurity, yet it provides a fascinating glimpse into the mundane aspects of life within the stone fortifications of the Middle Ages. The earliest historical records pertaining to such management practices can be traced back to the late 9th century, particularly in regions that would later comprise modern-day France and England. The establishment of feudal systems necessitated a certain degree of organization within castle kitchens to ensure the sustenance of both the lord's household and the retinue of knights and servants. One of the earliest documented instances of kitchen inventory management can be found in the records of the castle of Château de Lax, located in the Indre-et-Loire department of France. The castle, constructed under the auspices of Fulk Nera in the early 10th century, served not only as a military fortification but also as a residence and administrative center. Historical accounts from the late 10th century indicate that the kitchen staff was required to maintain a meticulous record of provisions, which included grains, meats, dairy products, and vegetables. The process was overseen by a steward, whose role was crucial in ensuring that supplies were well stocked and accounted for. By the 12th century, as castles became more sophisticated architectural structures, the complexity of kitchen inventory management similarly increased. In the Castle of Windsor, which was developed under the reign of King Henry II, an extensive kitchen complex was constructed to accommodate the growing needs of the royal household. The kitchen at Windsor, which included large stone fireplaces and an array of cooking implements, necessitated a systematic approach to inventory control. The steward, typically referred to as the master of the kitchen, was responsible for overseeing the kitchen staff, which included cooks, scullions, and a variety of other workers tasked with the preparation and storage of food. The administrative procedures surrounding inventory management in castle kitchens were rather regimented. It was common practice for the steward to conduct regular inventory checks, often on a weekly basis. These checks involved counting the remaining stocks of various items and recording them in a ledger, an essential tool for maintaining a precise account of the castle's provisions. The ledger itself, usually bound in leather, was often kept in a designated area within the kitchen, allowing for easy access by the steward and his subordinates. Daily routines within the castle kitchen were dictated by both the seasons and the nature of the feasting calendar. The preparation of meals was often dictated by agricultural cycles, with harvest periods requiring the kitchen to adjust its inventory accordingly. During the late summer months, for instance, the kitchen staff would focus on preserving fruits and vegetables through methods such as pickling or drying, while winter months necessitated the careful rationing of supplies. The steward would regularly consult the seasonal calendar to ensure that the kitchen was adequately stocked for the forthcoming months. In the early 13th century, the Castle of Carnarvon in Wales provides a notable case study in the evolution of kitchen inventory management. Under the direction of Edward I, the castle's kitchen was equipped with numerous storage facilities, including larders and cellars, which were essential for the proper management of the diverse range of provisions. The architectural design of the kitchen included a large central hearth, which was instrumental for cooking and roasting meats. The steward at Carnarvon instituted a system of coded marks on barrels and crates, allowing the kitchen staff to quickly identify the contents and determine the quantity available without extensive searching. As the 14th century approached, the consolidation of kitchen management practices continued to evolve. The castle kitchen at Leeds, constructed during the reign of Edward III, exemplifies advancements in both architectural design and inventory procedures. This kitchen featured a large work area, with designated sections for baking, roasting, and preparation. The steward's ledger from this period indicates a growing sophistication in inventory management. Rather than simple counts of provisions, the records included detailed descriptions of items, their origins, and expiration dates, reflecting an increased awareness of food safety and quality control. The administrative procedures in prominent castles such as Leeds mandated that the steward develop detailed procurement plans, often coordinated with local suppliers to ensure a steady influx of provisions. The steward's role became increasingly bureaucratic, and he was often required to report inventory statistics to the lord of the castle. This practice was formalized during the mid-14th century, as the increasing complexity of feudal duties demanded greater accountability for the management of resources. In addition to procurement, the management of waste and spoilage also became a critical component of inventory control. With the growing emphasis on efficient kitchen practices, stewards were tasked with implementing waste management strategies. The refuse from the kitchen was often composted or disposed of in designated areas outside the castle walls. Detailed records were kept regarding the disposal of waste, as it was recognized that improper management could lead to health hazards and unsanitary conditions within the castle. Daily routines in castle kitchens continued to evolve throughout the late medieval period. In the 15th century, the kitchen at the Tower of London illustrates the culmination of these practices. The kitchen complex included not only cooking areas but also storage facilities that were climate-controlled to some degree, employing techniques such as ventilation to prolong the life of perishable items. The steward, now often referred to as the master cook, was responsible for overseeing a staff that could number in the dozens, each member assigned specific tasks ranging from butchery to baking. The introduction of more formalized record-keeping practices during this period is noteworthy. The master cook maintained a daily log of food preparation, which included detailed accounts of the ingredients used and the methods employed in cooking. This log served as both an inventory record and a historical account of the culinary practices of the time. These logs, while tedious, provide valuable insight into the evolution of food preparation techniques and inventory management in the late medieval kitchen. In conclusion, the history of medieval castle kitchen inventory management, while ostensibly monotonous, reveals a complex interplay of architecture, administration, and daily routines. The evolution from rudimentary management practices in the 9th century to the more sophisticated systems observed in the 15th century signifies a broader trend in the organization of medieval life. The roles of stewards, cooks, and kitchen staff were critical to the sustenance of castle inhabitants, reflecting the intricate web of feudal relationships and responsibilities. The stone walls of castles, while primarily associated with defense and power, also served as the backdrop for the meticulous management of food resources, an essential task in the sustenance of medieval society. The construction of medieval castle kitchens was a process characterized by the utilization of locally sourced materials and adherence to specific architectural practices prevalent during the Middle Ages, specifically from the 11th to the 15th centuries. The kitchens were typically situated within the castle walls, often in proximity to the Great Hall, to facilitate the swift transfer of food to the dining area. The materials employed in the construction of these kitchens included timber, stone, and, in some cases, brick, which became more prevalent in the later periods of medieval architecture. Timber was frequently used for the framework due to its availability and ease of manipulation. Oak was the most commonly utilized wood, chosen for its durability and resistance to decay. The construction process began with the establishment of a solid foundation, which was often made from limestone or flint, providing a stable base. Walls were typically constructed using large stone blocks, which were quarried nearby. The dimensions of these walls varied, but a common thickness was approximately 3 to 4 feet, 0.9 to 1.2 meters, ensuring both structural integrity and insulation against the elements. The roofs of these kitchens were generally constructed from timber beams, which were then covered with thatch or wooden shingles. The construction of chimneys, a significant feature in later medieval kitchens, was also a critical aspect. These chimneys were often made from brick and were designed to efficiently vent smoke from the cooking fires. The first notable examples of brick chimneys in castle kitchens can be traced back to the late 13th century, with a gradual increase in their prevalence seen through the 14th century. Maintenance procedures for castle kitchens were essential to ensure their operational efficiency. Regular inspections were conducted, often on a weekly basis, to assess the condition of cooking equipment, storage areas, and ventilation systems. The kitchen staff, under the supervision of the head cook, was responsible for maintaining cleanliness and organization. This included the removal of ash and soot from the fire pits and the proper storage of foodstuffs to prevent spoilage. In terms of cleanliness, it was customary for the kitchen to be scrubbed down thoroughly at the end of each week. This involved the use of water, often drawn from a nearby well or stream, and, in some cases, the addition of vinegar. Certain herbs were also used for their antiseptic properties. The floors were typically made of packed earth or stone, which were cleaned using brushes made from twigs or straw. The importance of hygiene cannot be overstated, as the prevalence of foodborne illnesses during this period necessitated stringent cleaning practices. Financial records pertaining to castle kitchen inventories were meticulously maintained, reflecting the economic constraints and resources of the time. These records, often inscribed on parchment, documented the procurement of ingredients, wages of kitchen staff, and the costs associated with maintaining the kitchen's operational capacity. For example, a castle kitchen's annual budget in the late 14th century could range from 20 to 50 pounds, a considerable sum that would cover not only food supplies but also the upkeep of equipment and payment for labor. Costs were itemized to reflect the purchase of meat, grains, and vegetables, with prices fluctuating based on seasonal availability. In 1360, for instance, a pound of beef could be purchased for approximately 5 pence, while a bushel of wheat might cost 2 shillings. The financial management of these inventories was often overseen by a steward, who would report directly to the lord of the castle regarding any discrepancies or issues that arose. Personnel within the castle kitchen comprised a hierarchical structure, with specific job descriptions assigned to each member of the kitchen staff. At the top of this hierarchy was the head cook, who was responsible for menu planning, overseeing food preparation, and managing the kitchen staff. The head cook's duties extended to training apprentices and ensuring that all culinary practices adhered to the standards expected by the lord and his guests. Beneath the head cook were several subordinate positions, including the sous chef, who assisted with food preparation and cooking. The position of scullion was often filled by a young apprentice, typically a boy of around 12 years old, who would undertake the more laborious tasks, such as cleaning pots and fetching water. Other roles included bakers, who were responsible for bread production, and butchers, who handled the slaughtering and preparation of meat. The kitchen staff was often supplemented by seasonal workers, particularly during harvest time, when additional help was required to process and store the surplus produce. These workers were usually compensated with food and lodging, rather than monetary wages. The number of personnel employed in the kitchen could range from as few as 5 to as many as 20, depending on the size of the castle and the scale of the household. Technical specifications of medieval castle kitchens varied significantly based on regional practices and available resources. Cooking methods included boiling, roasting, and baking, which necessitated a variety of equipment. Large cauldrons made from cast iron were commonly used for boiling, while spit roasts were employed for cooking meats over an open flame. These spits were often hand-turned, requiring the attention of a kitchen assistant throughout the cooking process. Baking was typically conducted in large stone ovens, which were heated by burning wood or charcoal. The ovens were designed with an arched entrance, allowing for efficient heat retention. The internal dimensions of these ovens could measure approximately 6 feet, 1.8 meters, in width and 4 feet, 1.2 meters, in depth, accommodating large batches of bread. Bakers would prepare dough in advance, using a mixture of flour, water, and yeast, and would often leave it to rise for several hours before baking. Storage areas within castle kitchens were equally important, as proper management of inventory directly impacted food preservation. Larders were specifically designed for the storage of perishable goods, such as dairy products and meats. These larders were often constructed with thick stone walls to maintain a cool temperature. The dimensions of larders could vary, but a typical size was around 8 feet by 10 feet, 2.4 meters by 3 meters, providing ample space for shelving and hanging provisions. The use of root cellars was common for the storage of vegetables, such as carrots, turnips, and potatoes. These cellars were dug below ground level, often reaching depths of 5 to 6 feet, 1.5 to 1.8 meters, to utilize the Earth's natural insulation properties. Vegetables were stored in sand or straw to prolong their freshness. The careful management of these storage areas was essential for maintaining food quality throughout the winter months. Documentation regarding kitchen operations typically included inventory lists, which detailed the quantities of food items on hand. These lists were updated regularly, often on a daily basis, and were crucial for planning meals and ensuring sufficient supplies. For example, a kitchen inventory from the year 1355 may have included 200 pounds of salted fish, 150 pounds of grain, and 50 pounds of dried fruits, all meticulously recorded to avoid shortages. In conclusion, the history of medieval castle kitchen inventory management, while seemingly mundane, reflects the complexities and intricacies of daily life in the Middle Ages. The careful construction, maintenance, financial oversight, and personnel management of these kitchens were vital to the sustenance of the castle's inhabitants. The technical specifications and operational practices established during this period laid the groundwork for future advancements in culinary management, ultimately influencing the evolution of kitchen practices in subsequent centuries. The dull yet essential nature of this historical account underscores the significance of food resource management in the broader context of medieval society. The construction methods and materials employed in medieval castle kitchens were dictated by the prevailing architectural styles of the time and influenced by regional availability of resources. During the 12th century, the majority of kitchens were constructed using local stone, primarily limestone or granite, which offered durability and fire resistance. The walls were typically 2 to 3 feet thick, providing insulation and structural stability. The roof was often thatched or constructed from wooden beams, covered with wooden planks and topped with tiles made from fired clay. The design of these kitchens was usually rectangular, allowing for efficient use of space, which was critical given the limited square footage available within castle walls. In terms of layout, most kitchens featured a large central hearth, generally measuring 2.5 meters by 1.5 meters, used for cooking and heating. The hearth was often built with a stone base and sometimes had a chimney, although many kitchens still relied on open ventilation through windows or gaps in the roof for smoke dispersal. The positioning of the hearth was strategic, often located towards the back of the kitchen to maximize heat distribution to cooking areas while minimizing the risk of fire spreading to the rest of the castle. Maintenance procedures in the medieval castle kitchen were systematic and essential to the continued operation of food preparation and storage. Regular cleaning of the kitchen surfaces was mandated, with the frequency varying by season. During the winter months, when food spoilage was less of a concern, thorough cleaning was conducted bi-weekly. However, in summer, when foodborne illnesses were more prevalent, daily cleaning was standard practice. This included scrubbing stone floors with a mixture of water and vinegar, which was believed to possess antiseptic properties. The maintenance of cooking equipment was equally important. Cast iron pots and cauldrons, which could weigh upwards of 30 kilograms, required regular seasoning with animal fats to prevent rust. Wooden utensils, including spoons and cutting boards, were treated with beeswax to maintain their integrity and prevent warping. Additionally, the kitchen staff was responsible for inspecting the chimney flues on a monthly basis to prevent soot buildup, which could lead to dangerous chimney fires. Financial records and costs associated with kitchen operations were meticulously maintained, reflecting the broader economic realities of the feudal system. The lord of the castle typically allocated a specific budget for food supplies, which could vary significantly based on the harvest yields and the season. In 1250, for example, a lord might budget approximately 200 shillings for the purchase of grain, meat, and other staples over a 6-month period, while during times of scarcity, such as the famine years of 1315 to 1317, this budget could be reduced to as low as 50 shillings. Costs were also influenced by the personnel employed in the kitchen, which included a master cook, known as the coccus, as well as several assistants and apprentices. The coccus, often a skilled individual with experience from other noble households, could command a salary of up to 10 shillings per month, while assistants earned between 3 to 6 shillings, depending on their skills and responsibilities. Records from the late 14th century reveal that a castle kitchen might employ between 4 to 12 staff members at any given time, including scullery maids, who were responsible for washing dishes and cleaning, and pantry staff who managed dry goods. Job descriptions within the medieval kitchen were clearly delineated, with each role essential to the overall functionality of the operation. The cocus was responsible for menu planning, overseeing food preparation, and directing the kitchen staff. This included creating detailed meal plans for various events, which could include multiple courses for banquets. In contrast, the sous chef, or second cook, handled day-to-day cooking tasks and was responsible for the preparation of soups and sauces, while the third cook, known as the pottage maker, specialized in the preparation of stews and broths, common staples in the medieval diet. Scullery maids performed the critical task of cleaning and maintaining kitchen hygiene, which included washing pots and utensils, a process that often required the collection of water from nearby sources. The water had to be heated before use for washing dishes, as cold water was deemed inadequate for proper sanitation. Additionally, the pantry clerk was tasked with inventory management of dry goods, ensuring that stocks of grains, spices, and preserved meats were adequate and properly rotated, adhering to a first-in, first-out inventory principle to minimize spoilage. Technical specifications of medieval kitchen equipment varied significantly, though certain items were standard across most noble households. Cooking vessels were primarily made of cast iron, with sizes ranging from small pots of 5 liters to large cauldrons of up to 50 liters capacity. These vessels were often suspended over the hearth using iron hooks or tripods. Baking was accomplished in a brick oven, generally measuring 1.5 meters in height and 1 meter in width, capable of baking loaves of bread that weighed approximately 1 kilogram each. The oven required substantial time to heat, often needing to be stoked with wood or charcoal several hours prior to baking. Storage solutions were equally important, with larders being constructed to maintain the freshness of perishable items. Larders typically had walls of stone to prevent rodent ingress and were often equipped with raised wooden shelves to keep food off the ground. The dimensions of these larders could vary, but they generally measured around 2.5 meters by 3 meters, allowing for ample storage of salted meats, cheeses, and root vegetables. In conclusion, the dull history of medieval castle kitchen inventory management is a reflection of the broader societal structures in place during this period. The meticulous attention to construction methods, maintenance procedures, financial records, personnel roles, and technical specifications underscores the significance of food resource management in sustaining not only the daily operations of the kitchen but also the health and well-being of the castle's inhabitants. The organization of these kitchens was a key element in the larger framework of medieval life, revealing how even the most mundane aspects of daily existence were integral to the functioning of society. The construction methods and materials employed in medieval castle kitchens were dictated by the prevailing architectural styles of the time and influenced by regional availability of resources. During the 12th century, the majority of kitchens were constructed using local stone, primarily limestone or granite, which offered durability and fire resistance. The walls were typically 2 to 3 feet thick, providing insulation and structural stability. The roofs were often thatched or constructed from wooden beams, which were either covered with tiles or left open to allow smoke from cooking fires to escape. In the early 13th century, specifically around 1200, the development of the kitchen as a distinct space within a castle began to solidify. Notably, many castles featured kitchens that were separate from the main living quarters to prevent the spread of fire and to manage the smoke generated by cooking. For example, the kitchen at the Tower of London, built in the late 11th century, was a separate structure that allowed for efficient cooking while minimizing the risks associated with open flames. The use of local materials not only provided structural integrity but also influenced the design of kitchens. In England, for instance, the chalk and flint found in the southern regions were often used for constructing kitchens, while in the northern parts, sandstone was more prevalent. Additionally, coastal areas might utilize timber from local forests, which was abundant and relatively easy to work with, leading to variations in kitchen designs across regions. The use of timber frames in certain areas could also be seen in kitchens from the 14th century onward, where half-timbered constructions became popular, combining wattle and daub with wooden beams. The layout of a medieval kitchen was typically practical, with a large central hearth serving as the primary cooking area. This hearth was often built from stone and could measure up to 6 feet wide, providing ample space for multiple pots and cauldrons. In larger castles, such as Windsor Castle, which saw significant renovations in the late 14th century, additional cooking facilities would be included, such as ovens built into the walls or separate baking chambers. The hearth itself was usually surrounded by a stone or brick mantle, which helped contain the heat and prevent smoke from billowing into the kitchen. In terms of functionality, the medieval kitchen was equipped with various tools and utensils. Large cauldrons, often made of iron, could weigh upwards of 100 pounds when filled with food, and were used for boiling meats and stews. Skillets and pans made from cast iron were also common, and specialized utensils such as ladles, forks, and knives were crafted by blacksmiths. It is worth noting that the introduction of metalworking in the 12th century allowed for more sophisticated cooking tools, which significantly improved culinary practices. Food storage was another critical aspect of the kitchen's design. Many medieval castles incorporated larders and pantries, built with thick walls to maintain cooler temperatures, where preserved meats, grains, and dry goods could be stored. For instance, the larder at Carnarvon Castle, constructed in the late 13th century, showcases a well-designed space with a raised floor to prevent moisture from damaging supplies. Additionally, spices and herbs were stored in small containers, with more affluent households boasting extensive collections of exotic spices imported from trade routes, including pepper and cinnamon. The social dynamics within the kitchen were also important. The kitchen was often a hub of activity, where cooks, assistants, and servants would work together to prepare meals for the nobility. In larger castles, such as the Château de Chambord in France, which began construction in 1519, the kitchen staff could number in the dozens, especially during feasts when elaborate meals were served. These feasts could include multiple courses, with dishes ranging from roasted meats to intricate pastries, reflecting the wealth and status of the host. Moreover, the late medieval period saw a rise in the sophistication of cooking techniques, with influences from both local traditions and foreign cuisines. By the 15th century, the use of spices and the introduction of sugar began to change the palate of the nobility, leading to more elaborate dishes and presentations during banquets. The use of banquet tables and serving platters became commonplace, and the kitchen's role evolved to cater to these extravagant displays. In conclusion, the construction and design of medieval castle kitchens were deeply influenced by the materials available, regional architectural styles, and the changing culinary practices of the time. From the sturdy stone walls of the 12th century to the elaborate kitchen facilities of the 15th century, these kitchens were essential not only for food preparation but also as a reflection of the social and cultural dynamics of medieval life. As castles evolved over the centuries, so too did their kitchens, adapting to the needs and tastes of their inhabitants while remaining integral to the daily functioning of these fortified structures. The construction of medieval castle kitchens was a meticulous process that adhered to the architectural standards and practical necessities of the time. Generally, kitchens in castles were built to serve both functionality and security. The walls were typically composed of local stone, such as limestone or sandstone, which provided durability against potential sieges and fires. For instance, Durham Castle's kitchen, constructed in the late 11th century, featured walls that were approximately 3 feet thick, allowing for both insulation and protection. The roofs of these kitchens were commonly constructed using timber beams, often sourced from oak, which was prevalent in the forests surrounding many castles. The roofing material varied regionally. Some kitchens employed thatch, while others utilized wooden shingles or slate, depending on the availability of resources. The design of the kitchen often included a central hearth, which was crucial for cooking activities. These hearths were typically made from clay bricks or stone slabs and were built into the floor, measuring about 4 feet by 4 feet, to accommodate large pots and spits. Over the years, maintenance of the castle kitchen became an essential component of its operation. Regular upkeep involved cleaning the kitchen area to prevent the accumulation of grease and debris, which could lead to pest infestations and fire hazards. A standard practice was to conduct a thorough cleaning every fortnight, where all utensils were washed in hot water and ash, a common cleaning agent of the time. The floors were scrubbed with a mixture of sand and water, ensuring the removal of any leftover food particles. In addition to cleanliness, structural maintenance was also paramount. This included inspection of the roof for leaks, checking the integrity of the walls, and ensuring that the chimney, which often extended several feet above the kitchen, remained unobstructed. In 1250, for example, the kitchen at Warwick Castle underwent significant repairs that cost the lord of the castle 12 silver pennies, a substantial amount at the time, indicative of the general expenses related to maintaining such facilities. Financial records pertaining to castle kitchens were often recorded in the household accounts, which detailed expenditures related to food procurement, labor, and maintenance. By the late 14th century, meticulous records were kept, often in ledger books, that documented the cost of various food items. For example, in 1385, the kitchen at Bodiam Castle recorded expenses that included 20 shillings for meat, 15 shillings for fish, and 10 shillings for bread over the course of a month. These accounts not only served as financial records but also as a means of planning and forecasting future needs. When it came to personnel, the castle kitchen typically employed a range of staff, each with specific roles and responsibilities. The head cook, or cuisinier, was responsible for overall kitchen operations, menu planning, and the supervision of all kitchen staff. This individual was often skilled in various cooking techniques and was expected to have a knowledge of seasonal ingredients. Under the head cook, there were several other roles, including the scullion, who was tasked with basic food preparation and cleaning duties. The scullion often started working around the age of 12 and would typically be paid in room and board rather than coin. In larger kitchens, there were additional positions such as the pâtissier, who specialized in baking pastries and breads, and the boucher, responsible for butchering meat. Each of these roles had its own set of duties and required specific skills, which were usually passed down through apprenticeships. The technical specifications of the kitchen equipment also evolved over time. In the early medieval period, cooking implements were rudimentary, consisting mainly of cast iron pots and wooden utensils. By the 14th century, however, advancements in metallurgy allowed for the production of more sophisticated cooking tools, such as cauldrons and frying pans with brass or copper bases, which improved heat conduction. A typical cauldron used in castle kitchens would measure approximately 2 feet in diameter and be suspended over the fire using a chain mechanism, allowing for the adjustment of cooking temperature. In terms of storage, medieval kitchens employed various methods for preserving food. Salt was a primary preservative, particularly for meats and fish, with barrels used to store salted goods. The dimensions of these barrels varied, but a common size was around 3 feet high and 2 feet in diameter. Additionally, herbs and spices, often sourced from castle gardens or local markets, were stored in wooden boxes or earthenware pots, typically measuring around 1 foot in height. The role of inventory management became increasingly significant as the demands of the castle kitchen grew. By the late 13th century, inventory lists began to be compiled, detailing the quantities of food items on hand. These lists were crucial for ensuring that the kitchen maintained sufficient supplies, particularly during times of siege or scarcity. For example, an inventory from 1292 at Castle Rising listed 300 pounds of flour, 150 pounds of salted beef, and 50 gallons of ale, underscoring the need for careful tracking of perishable and non-perishable goods. Moreover, the castle kitchen was often the center of social activity and a site for the display of wealth and power. Grand feasts were held, requiring meticulous planning regarding not only the menu but also the quantity of food and drink necessary to accommodate guests. Documented accounts of such feasts, like the one held at the Tower of London in 1445, indicate that over 500 pounds of various meats, including swan and peacock, were prepared alongside an estimated 300 gallons of wine. The organization of these events necessitated a well-structured inventory management system to ensure all supplies were readily available and to avoid any last-minute shortages. As the medieval period progressed into the late 15th century, innovations in cooking techniques and equipment continued to influence kitchen management. The introduction of the spit jack, a mechanical device used to rotate meat over the fire, allowed for more efficient cooking methods. Spit jacks, often powered by weights or clockwork mechanisms, represented a significant advancement in culinary technology and were typically housed within the kitchen's infrastructure, often mounted on a stone wall or a wooden frame. In summary, the history of medieval castle kitchen inventory management is a reflection of the broader social, economic, and technological changes of the medieval period. From construction methods and materials to maintenance procedures, financial records, personnel roles, and technical specifications, each aspect played a crucial role in the daily operations of castle kitchens. The evolution of these kitchens not only catered to the needs of their inhabitants but also mirrored the complexities of medieval life, where food was both a necessity and a symbol of status. The diligent management of inventory ensured that these kitchens could operate smoothly, contributing to the sustenance and comfort of both nobility and their guests, while also providing essential services to the wider castle community. The construction methods and materials utilized in the establishment of medieval castle kitchens were predominantly dictated by the available resources and the prevailing architectural styles of the time. In the late 12th century, for instance, the kitchens were typically constructed using locally sourced stone, which provided durability and thermal mass, essential for the efficient operation of the kitchen's various cooking methods. The walls were often at least 3 feet thick, built from limestone or granite, depending on regional availability. These walls helped insulate the kitchen, maintaining a stable temperature conducive to food preservation. Roofs were generally made from wooden beams, with thatch or slate as the covering material. The use of timber was common, and oak was often preferred due to its strength and resistance to rot. In many cases, the roofs were designed with steep pitches to facilitate rain runoff, a necessary consideration given the damp climates of many regions in medieval Europe. The average roof height above the kitchen floor could reach approximately 12 to 15 feet, allowing for the installation of large chimneys essential for the venting of smoke from open hearths. The maintenance procedures of a medieval castle kitchen were both labor-intensive and systematic. Regular cleaning was paramount to ensure that food preparation areas remained hygienic and to prevent infestations of pests. Daily maintenance included the sweeping of floors made from cobblestones, the scrubbing of wooden tables, and the removal of ash and debris from the hearths. Each kitchen staff member was assigned specific tasks. For instance, the scullery maid was responsible for washing dishes and utensils, while the cook oversaw the preparation of meals and the condition of food storage areas. The kitchens were typically inspected weekly by the head cook or a designated steward. This inspection involved checking the state of the food supplies, the cleanliness of the kitchen, and the functionality of cooking implements. Any repairs needed, such as mending broken utensils or replacing damaged storage containers, were logged into a maintenance ledger. Such ledgers were essential, as they not only tracked the upkeep of the kitchen but also served as a historical record of the kitchen's operation over time. Financial records related to the castle kitchen were meticulously maintained, reflecting the costs associated with food procurement, staff wages, and maintenance expenses. The average annual budget for a castle kitchen in the 13th century could range from 100 to 300 marks, depending on the status of the nobility residing in the castle. Detailed accounts were kept for every item purchased, from fresh produce to cured meats, with records indicating the date of purchase, cost, and supplier. For instance, In 1245, a ledger entry might note the procurement of 50 pounds of flour at a cost of 2 shillings per pound, totaling 10 shillings, with a notation on the supplier being John of York. The castle's kitchen personnel were organized into a hierarchical structure, each with specific job descriptions and responsibilities. At the top of the hierarchy was the master cook, or chef de cuisine, who oversaw all kitchen operations, from menu planning to staff management. Below the master cook were the various assistants, known as cooks, who were responsible for different aspects of meal preparation, such as roasting, boiling, and baking. A typical kitchen could employ anywhere from 5 to 10 cooks, depending on its size and the frequency of banquets. Additionally, there were specialized roles such as the pastry cook, whose responsibility was to create desserts and baked goods, an essential component of any noble feast. The scullery maid, as previously mentioned, was often the most junior position within the kitchen staff, tasked with cleaning and basic food preparation. Other roles included the butcher, who was responsible for meat procurement and preparation, and the pantry steward, who managed the storage of dry goods and ensured that supplies were rotated to prevent spoilage. Technical specifications for kitchen equipment varied greatly, but certain items were universally recognized as essential. Hearths, typically constructed of brick or stone, measured approximately 6 feet wide by 4 feet deep, with a firebox designed to accommodate large logs for extended cooking periods. Cooking pots were predominantly made of iron, with sizes varying from small, holding approximately 1 to 2 gallons, for sauces to large, holding up to 10 gallons, for stews or soups. The availability of different sizes allowed for efficient meal preparation, accommodating varying numbers of guests. Ovens were another critical component of the kitchen, often built into the structure of the kitchen itself. These ovens were typically dome-shaped and constructed from brick or clay, with an internal diameter of about 4 to 6 feet. The ovens required careful temperature management, necessitating the use of thermometric devices made from simple metal rods, which were inserted into the bread to gauge doneness. Storage was also a vital element of kitchen operations. Wooden barrels, often made from oak, were used to store grains, while earthenware pots were commonly employed for liquids such as oils or vinegars. The average capacity of a grain barrel could reach up to 200 pounds, necessitating careful inventory management to ensure that supplies did not run low. The pantry was typically a cool, dry area, with ventilation to prevent moisture buildup, and was organized in a manner that prioritized the use of older items first to minimize waste. The process of inventory management within a medieval castle kitchen was less sophisticated than modern practices but was nonetheless systematic. Each month, the pantry steward would conduct a physical count of the supplies, comparing the inventory to the recorded purchases. Discrepancies were noted, and adjustments were made accordingly, often leading to discussions regarding supplier reliability or the need for alternative sources. This practice was crucial, as it ensured that the kitchen could consistently meet the demands of the household, especially during peak seasons when the castle might host numerous guests. In summary, the dull history of medieval castle kitchen inventory management reveals a complex interplay of construction, maintenance, financial oversight, personnel management, and technical specifications. Each of these components contributed to the effective functioning of the kitchen, ensuring that the needs of the nobility and their guests were met with efficiency and care. The meticulous attention to detail in every aspect of kitchen operations underscores the importance of these spaces within the larger context of medieval life and society. ### The Dull History of Medieval Castle Kitchen Inventory Management, Part 6. ### Regional Variations and Comparisons. The inventory management practices of medieval castle kitchens were not monolithic but rather displayed significant regional variations driven by factors such as local agricultural outputs, trade routes, and cultural preferences. In the northern regions of England, for example, the harsh climate dictated a reliance on preserved foods such as salted fish and pickled vegetables. Castle kitchens in these locations would often maintain extensive stocks of salt, a crucial preservative that was both a commodity and a necessity. Conversely, the kitchens of southern France, with its milder climate and fertile land, took advantage of fresh produce and a variety of herbs and spices. The culinary inventory here was likely to include more diverse ingredients, reflecting the culinary sophistication of the region. The presence of the Mediterranean allowed for the importation of olive oil, a staple that would have been virtually absent in the northern kitchens. This variation in inventory also extended to the types of meats available. While southern French castles might boast inventories filled with game birds, northern castles would likely feature larger quantities of domesticated animals, including pigs and cattle, due to the agricultural practices prevalent in those areas. The kitchens of castles in the Holy Roman Empire exhibited yet another layer of complexity in their inventory management. Here, the blend of various cultural influences led to a unique approach to food preservation and preparation. The use of fermented foods, such as sauerkraut or kvass, became prevalent, and thus, the inventories reflected a need for barrels and storage facilities that could accommodate such items. The meticulousness with which these kitchens recorded their inventories often mirrored the feudal obligations of the lords and vassals, as the management of food supplies was intrinsically linked to the sustenance of not just the castle's inhabitants but also the surrounding populace. ### Evolution over different time periods. As the medieval period progressed from the early Middle Ages into the late Middle Ages, the practices surrounding inventory management in castle kitchens underwent significant evolution. Initially, during the early medieval period, the inventory management system was rudimentary at best, relying heavily on oral traditions and rudimentary record-keeping methods. The inventory lists would often consist of simple tally marks made on wooden tablets or scraped onto the surfaces of stone walls, a method that left much to be desired in terms of accuracy and long-term preservation. By the 12th century, however, a shift began to occur, largely spurred by the increasing complexity of estate management. The rise of bureaucratic systems necessitated more sophisticated record-keeping practices. It was during this period that the introduction of parchment and ink became commonplace in inventories. Scribes, often employed by the lord of the castle, began to maintain detailed logs of supplies, noting quantities, sources, and dates of procurement. The lists became longer and more detailed, often organized by categories such as grains, meats, and dairy products. By the late 15th century, the inventory management of castle kitchens had evolved into a highly organized system, influenced by the growing centralization of power and the increasing importance of inventory control in ensuring the survival of both the castle and its inhabitants. The Renaissance brought about a renewed interest in culinary arts, and thus, kitchen inventories began to reflect not just the necessities for sustenance but also the desires for elaborate feasts and the inclusion of exotic ingredients. ##### Bureaucratic regulations and laws. The management of kitchen inventories in medieval castles was not merely a matter of practicality but was also heavily influenced by bureaucratic regulations and laws that governed food supplies and distribution. Local lords often imposed regulations that dictated how much of each essential good could be stored, thereby preventing hoarding and ensuring equitable distribution among the castle's inhabitants. For instance, in England, the Statute of Winchester, 1285, mandated that towns and castles maintain sufficient stocks of provisions to withstand sieges. This law necessitated a systematic approach to inventory management, and castle kitchens had to keep meticulous records to demonstrate compliance. Failure to adhere to these regulations could result in severe penalties, including fines and confiscation of goods. Moreover, the Church played a significant role in influencing food regulations. Monasteries often served as centers of agricultural innovation, and their involvement in local economies meant that castle kitchens had to adapt their inventories to align with ecclesiastical calendars, which dictated fasting periods and feast days. During Lent, for example, inventories would shift to reflect the absence of meat, leading to a greater reliance on fish and legumes. Additionally, the rise of guilds in urban centers further complicated inventory management practices. These organizations regulated the quality and price of foodstuffs, creating a marketplace that castle kitchens had to navigate carefully. Castle stewards were often tasked with ensuring that the supplies procured adhered to guild standards, which required additional record-keeping and communication with local merchants. ##### Supply chain and logistics. The logistics of managing a castle kitchen inventory were complex and multifaceted, involving a network of suppliers, transport methods, and storage solutions. The supply chain was not merely a linear process of procurement but rather a web of relationships that connected local farmers, merchants, and the castle itself. Transporting goods to the castle often involved various means of conveyance, including carts, pack animals, and, in some cases, riverboats. The logistics of such transportation required careful planning. For example, seasonal changes dictated the availability of certain goods, necessitating foresight in procurement practices. During harvest seasons, castle kitchens would see a surge in grain and produce inventories, while winter months would require a greater focus on preserved goods. The layout of the castle itself played a crucial role in the efficiency of inventory management. Kitchens were typically located near storerooms, which were essential for maintaining the freshness of perishable goods. These storerooms might include larders, cellars, and pantries, each with specific functions. For example, the larder was primarily used for cured meats and dairy products, while the pantry housed dried goods and spices. This spatial organization not only facilitated easier access to ingredients but also allowed for better oversight of stock levels. Moreover, the management of livestock was a critical component of the supply chain. Castles often maintained their herds, which required careful planning and inventory management. The breeding cycles of animals had to be accounted for, as did the logistics of feed and care. Stewards maintained detailed records of livestock numbers, health, and breeding, ensuring that the kitchen had a consistent supply of fresh meat and dairy products. Record-keeping methods. Record-keeping in medieval castle kitchens evolved significantly throughout the period, reflecting the increasing complexity of inventory management. Initially, kitchens relied on rudimentary systems, such as oral traditions and simple tally marks. However, as the need for more accurate and comprehensive records grew, so too did the methods employed. By the 12th century, parchment and ink had become the standard for record keeping. Scribes, often educated clerics or specialized staff, took on the responsibility of maintaining detailed inventories. These records included not only the quantities of various goods but also notes on the sources of supply, the condition of the items, and any relevant dates. Such meticulous documentation was essential for ensuring compliance with local regulations and for facilitating the efficient management of resources. The introduction of specialized inventory books became commonplace, with pages dedicated to different categories of goods. Some castles employed a system of color coding or symbols to denote the status of inventory, whether items were in stock, depleted, or in need of replenishment. Additionally, the use of ledgers allowed for easier cross-referencing of supplies with procurement records, which was crucial for maintaining accurate counts. As the late medieval period approached, the use of accounting practices became more widespread. The double-entry bookkeeping system, although not fully developed until the Renaissance, began to influence how inventories were recorded. This method allowed for a more precise tracking of inflows and outflows of goods, enabling castle kitchens to maintain a level of stock that could adequately meet the demands of both daily meals and special occasions. Furthermore, the rise of the printing press in the 15th century eventually facilitated the dissemination of standardized record-keeping methods. Manuals and treatises on estate management began to circulate, providing castle stewards with guidelines on best practices for inventory management. These texts often included templates for record-keeping and advice on how to maintain supplies effectively. Conclusion. The history of medieval castle kitchen inventory management, while ostensibly mundane, reveals a complex interplay of regional variations, evolving practices, bureaucratic regulations, supply chain logistics, and record-keeping methods. This intricate web of management was vital to the sustainability of medieval life, ensuring that castles could thrive amid the challenges they faced. The detailed attention to inventory not only facilitated culinary endeavors but also played a crucial role in the broader socio-political landscape of the time. By examining the multifaceted nature of inventory management in medieval castle kitchens, we gain insight into the quotidian yet essential practices that supported the intricate tapestry of medieval society. The dull history of these kitchens serves as a reminder of the importance of meticulous organization and the careful balancing of resources in the face of an ever-changing world. The dull history of medieval castle kitchen inventory management, Part 7. In the seemingly mundane world of medieval castle kitchen inventory management, a fascinating tapestry of regional variations and comparisons emerges, reflecting the unique cultural, geographical, and economic contexts of various territories. Throughout the medieval period, from the early Middle Ages, circa 500–1000 CE, to the late Middle Ages, circa 1300 to 1500 CE, the practices and regulations governing kitchen inventory management evolved significantly, shaped by local customs, available resources, and the bureaucratic frameworks that emerged in response to the growing complexity of feudal societies. Regional variations and comparisons. In England, for instance, the kitchen inventory management reflected the agrarian nature of the economy. The lords of the manor often relied on local peasants for the supply of foodstuffs, and the inventory management system was closely tied to the seasonal agricultural calendar. The absence of refrigeration meant that the preservation of food was a constant concern, leading to the employment of various methods such as salting, pickling, and drying. The kitchen staff, often organized hierarchically, would have detailed records of the seasonal produce, which varied dramatically from one region to another. In the northern regions, where the climate was harsher, root vegetables such as turnips and parsnips were staples, while the southern counties enjoyed a bounty of fruits and grains. By contrast, in the Mediterranean regions of Italy and southern France, the kitchen inventory management practices were markedly different due to the climate and the availability of resources. Here, olive oil, wine, and fresh vegetables were abundant, and the kitchens adopted an inventory management system that prioritized freshness. The use of herbs and spices was far more pronounced than in the north, leading to a culinary tradition that emphasized flavor and presentation. The kitchens in these regions often had a more fluid inventory system, adapting quickly to the availability of fresh produce from local markets, reflecting the vibrant trade routes established during the medieval period. In contrast, the castles of the Holy Roman Empire exhibited a different approach to inventory management. The vastness of the territories meant that kitchens had to deal with a diverse range of ingredients, often requiring a more complex bureaucratic structure. The presence of various noble houses within close proximity led to competition, and as such, the inventory management systems became more formalized. Record-keeping methods here involved meticulous accounts of incoming supplies from different regions, often leading to elaborate ledgers where every transaction was recorded, providing a clear comparison of resource availability and expenditure. Evolution over different time periods. As the medieval period progressed, the evolution of kitchen inventory management mirrored the broader socio-economic changes occurring across Europe. In the early medieval period, kitchens were relatively simple, often run by a single cook who managed both the procurement and preparation of food. However, as castles grew in size and the feudal system became more entrenched, the kitchen staff expanded significantly. The advent of professional cooks and specialized kitchen roles, such as the butler, pantry master, and kitchen clerk, led to the development of sophisticated inventory management systems. By the late medieval period, as trade networks expanded and the economy began to shift from feudalism to early capitalism, the kitchen inventory management practices became more formal. The introduction of ledger books and detailed record-keeping allowed for greater accountability and transparency in food procurement. Noble households began to employ clerks specifically for inventory management, who meticulously recorded the quantities of various food items received, used, and stored. This era saw the rise of standardized measurement systems, which facilitated the tracking of food supplies and enabled kitchens to manage their inventories with a level of precision previously unseen. Moreover, the establishment of guilds in urban centers during the late medieval period had a significant impact on inventory management practices. Guilds regulated trade practices, including the quality and pricing of foodstuffs. As a result, kitchens in castles located near cities benefited from a more organized supply chain, leading to an increased emphasis on record-keeping. The guilds often required merchants to maintain detailed records of their transactions, which in turn influenced the inventory management practices of the kitchens that relied on their goods. Bureaucratic regulations and laws. The bureaucratic regulations surrounding kitchen inventory management were often influenced by the broader legal frameworks of the time. In England, for instance, the Assize of Bread and Ale, established in the 13th century, regulated the prices and quality of these staples, ensuring that the nobility received consistent and reliable provisions for their kitchens. Such regulations necessitated vigilant inventory management, as kitchens needed to ensure compliance with these standards while managing their costs effectively. Similar regulations appeared across Europe, often emerging from the necessity to maintain order and prevent fraud within the supply chains. In France, the Ordinance of 1355 required that all bakers keep records of their transactions to ensure accountability and prevent the overcharging of customers, including noble estates. The implications of such regulations extended into the kitchen inventory management systems, as cooks and clerks were obligated to maintain accurate records of supplies used and provisions received. The emergence of these bureaucratic frameworks led to the establishment of inventory management practices that were not merely functional but also reflective of the social order. The need for accountability in food supply mirrored the hierarchies within the castle, where the kitchen staff adhered to the dictates of the lord and the expectations of the court. This created a culture of meticulous record-keeping, where every item entering and leaving the kitchen was documented, often leading to the creation of sprawling ledgers that detailed the minutiae of kitchen operations. Supply chain and logistics. The logistics of supply chain management in medieval castle kitchens were inherently complex, especially considering the lack of modern transportation systems. The procurement of foodstuffs often involved a network of local farmers, merchants, and traders. This network was especially pronounced in areas with diverse agricultural outputs, where kitchens would require a steady supply of fresh ingredients to maintain their operations. The concept of food miles, though not articulated as such during the medieval period, was an inherent aspect of kitchen inventory management. Lords often had agreements with local farmers to supply specific quantities of produce, which would be recorded meticulously to ensure that the castle's needs were met without overextending resources. Seasonal fluctuations played a crucial role in these logistics. For instance, during harvest time, kitchens would stockpile grains and vegetables, while the winter months would necessitate careful rationing and reliance on preserved foods. Transportation challenges further complicated the logistics of supply chain management. The lack of paved roads meant that the movement of goods was often slow and arduous, reliant on pack animals and carts. This necessitated the establishment of local storage facilities and markets where food could be stored temporarily before being transported to the kitchens. The role of the pantry master became vital, as this individual was responsible for overseeing the storage of provisions, ensuring that items were rotated and used before spoilage occurred. Record-keeping methods. The methods of record-keeping in medieval castle kitchens were often an intricate affair, reflecting both the availability of resources and the level of sophistication within a household. In the early medieval period, record-keeping was generally informal, often relying on oral traditions and simple tally marks to track supplies. However, as the medieval period progressed, the advent of written records became paramount to effective inventory management. Clerks employed in the kitchen would often use parchment or wax tablets to maintain records of supplies. The introduction of quill pens and ink allowed for greater precision in record keeping, leading to more detailed inventories. The use of abbreviations and symbols became commonplace to facilitate quicker entries, resulting in a unique lexicon of accounting that was understood by those within the kitchen hierarchy. The inventory itself often took the form of detailed lists, cataloging not only the types of food items available but also their quantities, sources, and conditions. For instance, a typical inventory entry might detail the number of barrels of ale, specifying the type and brew date alongside the name of the merchant who supplied it. Each entry was typically dated, allowing for the tracking of supplies over time, which was essential for both planning meals and ensuring proper storage. The culmination of these record-keeping practices led to the creation of comprehensive kitchen ledgers, which could span years and offer insight into the operations of a medieval castle kitchen. These ledgers became valuable historical documents, providing modern historians with a glimpse into the daily lives and culinary practices of the medieval nobility. In conclusion, the tedious history of medieval castle kitchen inventory management is a rich tapestry woven from regional variations, evolving practices, bureaucratic regulations, intricate supply chains, and meticulous record-keeping methods. While the minutiae of this subject may seem dull at first glance, it reveals the complexities of medieval life and the importance of food management as a reflection of social order, economic systems, and cultural practices. The evolution of these practices provides a window into the past, showcasing how even the most mundane aspects of life were steeped in intricacies that shaped the very fabric of medieval society. The Dull History of Medieval Castle Kitchen Inventory Management, Part 8. As we proceed into the labyrinthine depths of the dull history of medieval castle kitchen inventory management, one must recognize the inherent regional variations and comparisons that characterize this most mundane of subjects. Indeed, the manner in which castle kitchens managed their inventories was not uniform across the vast expanse of medieval Europe. Rather, it was influenced by local customs, agricultural practices, socio-economic conditions, and the varying degrees of feudal organization that permeated the landscape. Regional variations and comparisons. In the northern realms, particularly within the British Isles, castle kitchens operated under the auspices of a distinctly hierarchical system. The kitchens of Scottish castles, for instance, were often markedly different from those found in English fortifications. Scottish kitchens tended to utilize a wider array of game meats due to the availability of vast hunting grounds and the feudal lord's proclivity for sport hunting. Records from the late 14th century indicate that game such as venison, wild boar, and even grouse were regularly documented in kitchen inventories, often supplemented by locally foraged herbs and berries. Conversely, in the southern regions of England and France, where agriculture flourished in the fertile plains, the emphasis was predominantly on cultivated grains and domesticated livestock. The record-keeping from the kitchens of a Norman castle reveals a reliance on barley and oats, alongside sheep and cattle, which were meticulously catalogued to ensure that the larders were never devoid of necessary staples. Similarly, the Mediterranean castle kitchens, particularly those located in the kingdoms of Aragon and Castile, showcased a different inventory management approach. The abundance of olive oil, seafood, and citrus fruits in these regions necessitated a unique categorization system. The records from the kitchens of the Alhambra reveal the inclusion of spices and condiments, such as saffron and cumin, which were meticulously tallied alongside the more common grains and livestock. This regional specificity illustrates not only the diversity in culinary practices but also the broader agricultural and economic conditions that informed these inventories. Evolution over different time periods. As one delves into the annals of time, the evolution of medieval castle kitchen inventory management becomes apparent. The early medieval period, characterized by a largely agrarian society, saw kitchens operating on a subsistence basis. Inventory lists during this time were rudimentary, often scrawled upon parchment with little regard for detailed categorization. A 12th century inventory from a modest manor house in England reveals a simple enumeration of provisions, listing items such as 2 barrels of ale, 3 sacks of wheat, and a dozen chickens. However, as the Middle Ages progressed into the 13th and 14th centuries, the advent of more sophisticated agricultural techniques and burgeoning trade networks necessitated a more comprehensive approach to inventory management. The development of specialized roles within the kitchen staff, such as the pantry steward and the cellarer, contributed to this evolution. These positions were often charged with the responsibility of not only procuring but also maintaining meticulous records of the kitchen stock. By the late 15th century, with the rise of urban centers and an increase in the complexity of feudal economies, inventory management became even more formalized. The emergence of the household account book, an extensive ledger detailing every aspect of a castle's consumption, became common. A notable example can be found in the extensive ledgers of the Duke of Burgundy, which meticulously catalogued not only the quantities of foodstuffs but also the costs associated with their procurement. Such records often included the name of the merchant or supplier, the date of purchase, and even the terms of sale, thus illustrating a significant leap in the bureaucratic sophistication of medieval kitchens. Bureaucratic regulations and laws. The bureaucratic regulations governing kitchen inventories were often dictated by the larger legal frameworks of the time. Feudal lords maintained control over their estates through a series of ordinances and regulations that dictated not only the management of resources but also the rights of vassals and serfs. The Statute of Winchester, enacted in 1285, is a prime example of how legal mandates influenced inventory practices. This statute required households to maintain records of provisions for the protection of the realm, a response to the need for proper stockpiling in times of war. In addition to overarching legal frameworks, the Church wielded considerable influence over the management of kitchens within monastic settings. Monasteries often had detailed regulations regarding the use and distribution of food, with strict guidelines governing the quantities and types of provisions that could be consumed. The rule of Saint Benedict provided a framework for monastic kitchens, emphasizing moderation and communal sharing. Abbots' inventories from the 12th century delineate what could be stored and how it ought to be utilized, ensuring that all members of the monastic community were adequately fed while minimizing waste. The intersection of local customs and overarching legal requirements illustrates the complexity of medieval kitchen management. The careful navigation of these bureaucratic landscapes ensured that the kitchens operated efficiently, even in the face of external pressures such as famine or conflict. Supply chain and logistics. The supply chain and logistics of medieval castle kitchens were intricate, albeit often overlooked in historical discourse. The procurement of food and supplies was a task requiring extensive networking, as kitchens depended on a variety of sources to maintain their stocks. Local farmers, merchants, and even itinerant traders played crucial roles in the supply chain, often bringing goods to the castle gates. The logistics of transporting goods to the castle were governed by seasonal cycles and geographical considerations. During the harvest season, for instance, kitchens would experience a surge in fresh produce, necessitating careful planning to ensure that items like fruits and vegetables were consumed promptly before spoilage. Conversely, during the winter months, reliance on preserved goods such as salted meats and pickled vegetables became paramount. The records from the kitchen of a typical English castle during the winter of 1350 illustrate this seasonal variation, noting a shift towards greater quantities of preserved items, 10 barrels of salted herring, 3 casks of pickled cabbage, as fresh goods became increasingly scarce. Moreover, the logistics of inventory management extended beyond mere procurement. The storage conditions of various foodstuffs played a vital role in maintaining the integrity of the inventory. Different items required distinct storage solutions. Grains needed cool, dry places, while meats required cold storage, often achieved through the use of ice or salt. The extensive use of cellars for the preservation of perishable items highlights the ingenuity of medieval kitchens in employing available resources to manage their stock effectively. Record-keeping methods. The methods of record-keeping utilized in medieval castle kitchens were as varied as the inventories themselves. In the earliest periods, records were often maintained in the form of simple lists, hastily penned by the kitchen steward. These lists, while functional, lacked the detailed categorization that would later emerge. As the complexity of inventory management grew, so too did the methods of record-keeping. By the late medieval period, the advent of specialized account books became commonplace. These ledgers serve not only as inventory lists but also as essential tools for financial management. The inclusion of columns for quantities, costs, and suppliers allowed for a comprehensive overview of kitchen operations. The meticulousness of record-keeping can be illustrated through an account book from a 15th-century French chateau, which detailed not just the items in stock but also the frequency of purchases, providing insight into seasonal trends and consumption patterns. In addition to written records, some kitchens employed visual aids to assist in inventory management. The use of tally sticks, wooden sticks with notches cut into them, served as a primitive yet effective method for tracking inventory levels. Each notch represented an item or quantity, allowing kitchen staff to quickly ascertain their stock levels without the need for extensive written documentation. The evolution of record-keeping methods reflects the broader trends in medieval society, wherein the rise of literacy and bureaucratic governance prompted a shift towards more formalized practices. The kitchen inventories of the late medieval period stand as a testament to this evolution, showcasing the increasing sophistication of inventory management in response to the demands of a changing world. In conclusion, the exploration of regional variations, the evolution over time, bureaucratic regulations, supply chain logistics, and record-keeping methods elucidates the often overlooked complexity of medieval castle kitchen inventory management. As we continue our journey through this dull yet necessary history, we shall uncover further layers of mundanity that underpin the very fabric of medieval life. The dull history of medieval castle kitchen inventory management has traversed a multitude of topics, probing the intricate web of culinary logistics that govern the sustenance of noble households. As we delve deeper into the history, we will explore the regional variations and comparisons that characterize different kingdoms and principalities, the evolution of inventory management practices over various historical periods, the bureaucratic regulations and laws that shape these practices, the complexities of supply chain and logistics, and the diverse methods of record-keeping employed by medieval kitchen stewards. ### Regional variations and comparisons. The medieval landscape of Europe was not uniform, rather, it was a patchwork of diverse cultures and customs that influenced the culinary practices of castle kitchens. In England, for instance, the inventory management system of a castle kitchen was markedly different from that of a contemporaneous French castle. The English stewards often relied on a system of seasonal inventories, which were meticulously tailored to the agricultural output of the surrounding lands. Such inventories would include a detailed list of grains, meats, and seasonal fruits, with an emphasis on local produce. In contrast, the French kitchens, particularly those in the northern regions such as Normandy, adopted a more elaborate and centralized approach to inventory management. Here, the practice of procuring goods from a wide range of sources, including distant markets, was commonplace. The French stewards would keep extensive records of not only the perishables but also preserved goods, such as salted fish and cured meats, necessitating a system that could track items across a broader supply chain. Regional variations extended beyond mere inventory practices. They also encompassed the types of foodstuffs prioritized in each area. In the Mediterranean regions, for example, olive oil and citrus fruits were staples, while in the colder, northern territories, preservation methods such as pickling and smoking were crucial to inventory management. These regional dietary preferences influenced how kitchen staff arranged their inventories, leading to variations in storage methods, shelving units, and even the types of containers utilized for long-term preservation. #evolution over different time periods. As one progresses through the medieval timeline, it becomes evident that the inventory management practices within castle kitchens underwent significant evolution. The early medieval period, often referred to as the Dark Ages, was characterized by a rudimentary approach to food management. Kitchens were primarily focused on immediate needs, with minimal foresight into long-term inventory strategies. The emphasis was on sustenance, and as such, kitchen records were often scribbled on scraps of parchment or wax tablets, if they existed at all. By the High Middle Ages, roughly from the 12th to the 14th centuries, there was a marked sophistication in culinary practices, which directly impacted inventory management. With an increase in trade and commerce, especially during the rise of the Hanseatic League, kitchens began to adopt more systematic approaches to keep track of goods. This era saw the introduction of more formalized inventory lists, often written in Latin, which became essential for record-keeping among educated stewards. The late medieval period heralded further advancements, as the rise of larger feudal estates necessitated comprehensive inventory management systems. The introduction of the ledger, a book used to record financial transactions, found its way into kitchen management. Stewards began to document not only the items available but also their costs, quantities, and sources. This evolution marked a pivotal shift towards a more business-oriented approach to kitchen inventory, paving the way for more rigorous management techniques in the Renaissance period that followed. #Bureaucratic regulations and laws. As the medieval period progressed, so too did the bureaucratic regulations surrounding food management in castle kitchens. Various monarchs and local lords established laws aimed at regulating food supply and consumption, which had a direct bearing on how inventory was managed. For instance, the assize of bread and ale, originating from England in the 12th century, sought to standardize the measurements and pricing of staple commodities, thereby influencing not only market practices but also inventory management in noble households. In addition to these regulations, the Church played a significant role in influencing the culinary inventory practices of the time. The ecclesiastical calendar dictated periods of fasting and feasting, which necessitated adjustments in the types of food stocked in the kitchens. Stewards were often compelled to keep extensive records to ensure compliance with these religious regulations, which might require the substitution of certain meats with fish during Lent or the preparation of special dishes for feast days. Moreover, the rise of guild systems in urban centers introduced additional layers of regulation that affected how stewards procured goods. Guilds would often set standards for the quality of foodstuffs, which meant that kitchen inventories had to be regularly updated to reflect the latest market conditions and standards. Failure to adhere to these regulations could result in fines or loss of reputation, further compounding the necessity for meticulous inventory management. #Supply chain and logistics. The supply chain of a medieval castle kitchen was often a complex web that intertwined local agricultural practices with broader trade networks. The logistics of inventory management extended well beyond the castle walls, encompassing relationships with local farmers, merchants, and even distant trading partners. The stewardship of a castle kitchen required not only the capacity to manage supplies but also the foresight to anticipate shortages and surpluses based on seasonal cycles. Local markets served as the primary source for fresh produce, meats, and dairy, while longer-lasting goods such as grains and preserved foods were often acquired through broader trade routes. Stewards needed to establish reliable connections with suppliers, which could range from local peasant farmers to merchant ships arriving from foreign ports. This required a keen understanding of the cost and quality of goods, as well as an ability to negotiate effectively. Transportation logistics also played a crucial role in inventory management. The movement of goods from the point of origin to the castle kitchen necessitated careful planning. Horses, carts, and waterways were commonly used for transport, and stewards often had to account for seasonal weather conditions that could impede delivery schedules. A sudden rainstorm or heavy snowfall could mean the difference between a well-stocked kitchen and one facing shortages, necessitating a flexible and responsive inventory system. ### record-keeping methods. The methods of record-keeping in medieval castle kitchens were as varied as the inventories themselves. In the earlier periods, records were often informal, relying on memory and verbal communication among the kitchen staff. However, as the demand for accuracy and accountability increased, more formalized methods of documentation were adopted. Parchment and vellum became the preferred materials for record-keeping, as they were more durable than other writing surfaces. Stewards would employ quills and ink to maintain detailed accounts of inventory, which were often organized by categories such as grains, meats, dairy, and seasonal vegetables. These records could be comprehensive, detailing not just quantities but also the source of each item, dates of procurement, and even the costs associated with each transaction. In addition to written records, the use of tally sticks, a method of recording quantities through physical notches on a stick, was employed in some kitchens for simpler inventory management. This method allowed for quick visual references and could be easily shared among kitchen staff without the need for literacy. As we approach the tail end of the medieval period, the advent of the printing press began to influence record-keeping practices. The ability to produce multiple copies of standardized forms and inventory lists meant that kitchens could adopt more uniform practices, further promoting efficiency and accuracy in inventory management. In conclusion, the tedious history of medieval castle kitchen inventory management reveals a complex interplay of regional variations, evolving practices over time, regulatory influences, logistical considerations, and record-keeping methodologies. While the subject may seem unremarkable at first glance, the intricate details and systems that developed around it are indicative of a broader societal commitment to order and efficiency in an age marked by significant transformation. The mundane yet essential practices of inventory management in medieval kitchens serve as a testament to the ingenuity and adaptability of those who navigated the culinary landscapes of their time. The Dull History of Medieval Castle Kitchen Inventory Management, Part 10. As we delve deeper into the intricate and often monotonous realm of medieval castle kitchen inventory management, it is imperative to acknowledge the regional variations and comparisons that existed across the vast landscape of Europe. The geographical diversity of the continent greatly influenced the practices and procedures associated with kitchen inventory management in castles, as local resources, customs, and socio-economic conditions shaped the ways in which these kitchens operated. In England, for example, the inventory management of castle kitchens was heavily influenced by the feudal system and the agrarian economy. The manorial system allowed lords and ladies to exert control over vast tracts of land, which in turn dictated the types of foodstuffs available for consumption. The English castle kitchen often relied on local farms for fresh produce, while also maintaining a stock of preserved goods such as salted meats and pickled vegetables to ensure sustenance during the harsh winter months. The inventory records, typically kept in large ledgers, would often include a detailed list of the quantities of grains, meats, and dairy products procured from vassals, alongside notes on the seasonal availability of various ingredients. In contrast, the kitchens of French castles exhibited a more sophisticated approach to inventory management, shaped by the burgeoning culinary arts and the rise of court culture. French noble households employed a more centralized form of inventory management, often utilizing a dedicated steward or a provost who was responsible for overseeing the procurement and distribution of foodstuffs. This role was crucial in maintaining the elaborate feasts and banquets for which French nobility became renowned. The record-keeping methods in these kitchens often included not just the quantities of food, but also detailed descriptions of the provenance of ingredients, reflecting a growing interest in gastronomy that would eventually culminate in the French culinary revolution of the Renaissance. The evolution of kitchen inventory management practices over different time periods reveals a gradual shift from rudimentary methods of stock assessment to more organized and systematic approaches. In the early medieval period, kitchens operated under a rather primitive system of inventory management, often relying on oral traditions and simple tally marks scratched onto wooden boards. As castles grew in size and complexity, particularly during the High Middle Ages, the need for a more formalized system became apparent. The introduction of written records, often in the form of scrolls or parchment, allowed for better tracking of supplies and wastage, while also facilitating the accounting processes necessary for the efficient operation of the kitchen. By the late medieval period, the advent of more complex bureaucratic regulations and laws further influenced the management of castle kitchens. The establishment of various guilds and trade associations imposed standards on the quality of food and the conduct of suppliers. In England, for example, the Assize of Bread and Ale, enacted in the 13th century, set forth strict regulations regarding the weight and price of these staple commodities, with implications for how castle kitchens managed their supplies. Violations of these regulations could lead to severe penalties, thus ensuring that castle kitchens maintained an adequate inventory of quality goods to meet both the nutritional needs of their inhabitants and the standards set forth by governing bodies. Moreover, the influence of royal decrees and local ordinances cannot be underestimated in the context of medieval castle kitchen inventory management. Various laws mandated not only the types of food that should be available but also the manner in which they were stored and prepared. For instance, The medieval period saw the rise of the concept of food sovereignty, which emphasized the importance of local food systems in ensuring the stability of the realm. This led to regulations concerning the preservation of local food supplies and the prohibition of the export of certain goods during times of famine, thereby directly impacting the inventory management practices of castle kitchens. The complexities of supply chain and logistics in the context of medieval castle kitchens are also worthy of examination. The procurement of foodstuffs involved a myriad of considerations, from seasonal availability to transportation methods. In regions where agriculture was prevalent, castle kitchens often relied on a network of local farmers and merchants to supply fresh produce and livestock. The logistics of transporting these goods to the castle were formidable, often involving lengthy journeys on foot or by cart, which necessitated careful planning and coordination. Records of deliveries would typically detail the type and quantity of goods received, along with notes on the condition upon arrival, a practice that would later evolve into more standardized forms of inventory management. Furthermore, the role of marketplaces in the supply chain cannot be overlooked. Many castles were situated near burgeoning towns, where local markets provided an essential link between producers and consumers. Market days were critical events for castle stewards, who would send representatives to negotiate prices and procure the necessary foodstuffs. These transactions were meticulously recorded, with detailed inventories maintained to ensure that the castle kitchen was adequately stocked. The presence of local markets also fostered a culture of competition among suppliers, thereby enhancing the quality and variety of goods available to castle kitchens. Record-keeping methods employed in medieval castle kitchens varied widely, influenced by factors such as literacy rates, the availability of writing materials, and the importance placed on meticulous accounting. Initially, many kitchens relied on a simple system of tally marks or notched sticks to track inventories. However, as literacy rates improved and parchment became more accessible, kitchens began to adopt written records. The introduction of ledgers and inventories allowed for a more organized approach to inventory management, enabling kitchen staff to track both the inflow and outflow of supplies more effectively. In many castles, the role of the kitchen clerk emerged as a critical position, responsible for maintaining accurate records of all foodstuffs and supplies. This individual would often compile comprehensive inventories that cataloged not only the quantities of food available but also detailed notes on their quality and condition. Such records were essential for managing the kitchen's operations, as they provided the data needed to make informed decisions regarding procurement, meal planning, and waste management. The meticulous nature of record-keeping extended beyond mere inventories. It also encompassed the documentation of recipes and cooking methods. Many kitchens maintained collections of recipes that detailed not only the ingredients required but also the specific techniques employed in their preparation. These records served a dual purpose. They facilitated the training of new kitchen staff and provided a means of ensuring consistency in the quality of the food served. In conclusion, the history of medieval castle kitchen inventory management is a tapestry woven from the threads of regional variations, evolving practices, bureaucratic regulations, supply chain logistics, and meticulous record-keeping methods. Each of these aspects contributed to a complex system that, while seemingly mundane, played a crucial role in the overall functioning of medieval society. The evolution of these practices reflects not only the practical needs of the time but also the broader social and economic structures that shaped the lives of those who inhabited these castles. As we continue our exploration of this often overlooked subject, we shall endeavor to uncover the lesser-known intricacies and nuances that define the daily operations of medieval castle kitchens, forever preserving the legacy of their tedious yet essential inventory management systems. The dull history of medieval castle kitchen inventory management. In the vast and often monotonous expanse of medieval history, few topics invoke as much yawning as the management of kitchen inventories in castles. This seemingly mundane aspect of medieval life, however, serves as a revealing window into the broader socio-economic structures of the time. Through an exhaustive exploration of minor historical figures, specific case studies, comparative analyses, archaeological findings, and plausible primary source quotations, we shall delve into the intricate, albeit tedious, details of castle kitchen inventory management. Minor historical figures and their roles. To fully appreciate the drudgery of medieval kitchen inventory management, we must first familiarize ourselves with some of the lesser-known figures who played crucial roles in this culinary bureaucracy. A. The pantry keeper. One such figure was the pantry keeper, known in Old French as the paintier. This individual was responsible for overseeing the storage of foodstuffs in the pantry, a space that was both revered and reviled. The pantry keeper meticulously catalogued the inventory of grains, dried fruits, and preserved meats, often using a simple ledger made from parchment. One can only imagine the monotony of such tasks, as recorded in the fictional primary source from the year 1342, upon the 5th day of May, I did count the barrels of salted herring and found 52. There were also 13 sacks of oats and a single jar of pickled turnips, which I must admit was rather disappointing. B. The cook. The cook, or cuisinier, was another pivotal figure, though often overshadowed by more glamorous roles such as the lord or lady of the castle. The cook was tasked with not only preparing meals but also maintaining an inventory of perishable goods. This included a daily enumeration of vegetables and meats, a task that required immense dedication, especially during harvest season when the influx of produce could overwhelm the humble kitchen. The fictional record states, on the 21st of August, I did receive from the steward a basket of carrots, which I counted to be precisely 73. All were in good condition, except for 3 which had begun to rot. C. The steward. The steward, or seneschal, played a multifaceted role in the management of the castle and its kitchen. This individual was responsible for the overall oversight of the castle's resources, including the kitchen inventory. The steward would often work closely with the pantry keeper and cook to ensure that inventory levels were adequate. One can only imagine the dull meetings they held, discussing the merits of various preservation techniques for meats or the proper storage of grains. A hypothetical primary source from 1350 reads, "In our last council, we lamented the decrease in our barley stores, which hath fallen to a mere 200 bushels. I advised the pantry keeper to procure additional supplies from the market at York, for the scarcity of grain is a matter of great concern." 2. Specific case studies with dates ***. A. Case study, the Castle of Warwick, 1365. In the year 1365, the castle kitchen at Warwick underwent a significant change in its inventory management practices. Historical records indicate that the lord of the castle, the Earl of Warwick, commissioned a detailed inventory of all kitchen supplies, which included a list of both food items and kitchenware. This list, though tedious to read, offers a glimpse into the culinary practices of the time. The inventory noted, in the year of our Lord 1365, there were found within the castle a total of 138 earthenware pots, 47 iron cauldrons, and 3 wooden spoons, which were in a state of fair condition. B. Case study, the Royal Kitchen of King Henry IV, 1400. Another case study worth mentioning is that of the Royal Kitchen under King Henry IV. In 1400, the management of the kitchen inventory was recorded with great detail by the royal clerk. The inventory included a staggering number of items, from foodstuffs to utensils, demonstrating the immense scale of royal kitchens. The fictional primary source states, "The royal kitchen hath received a shipment of 1,200 pounds of beef, 600 pounds of mutton, and 350 pounds of pork. Additionally, we have procured 300 pounds of salt for preservation, which is, as always, of the finest quality." 3. Comparative analysis with other regions ***. While the castle kitchen inventory management in England during the medieval period was characterized by a certain level of bureaucratic tedium, it is interesting to compare this to practices in other regions, such as France and the Holy Roman Empire. A. France. In France, the management of kitchen inventories was often more centralized. The role of the maître de cuisine, or master cook, was more pronounced, and kitchen inventories were often kept in elaborately decorated ledgers. A fictional observation from a French source notes, in the castle of Amboise, the kitchen inventory was maintained with such flair that each entry was adorned with miniature illustrations of the foodstuffs, a practice that I must admit is rather pleasing to the eye, though not particularly efficient. B. Holy Roman Empire. In the Holy Roman Empire, the management of kitchen inventories was similarly bureaucratic, albeit with a focus on the seasonal availability of produce. The Küchenmeister, or kitchen master, was responsible for ensuring that the inventory reflected the seasonal changes. A fictional primary source from a 1423 German manuscript states, "In the month of June, we must account for the abundance of asparagus, which hath grown in such quantity that we are at risk of a surplus. Therefore, I propose a feast to utilize these fine vegetables, lest they spoil." 4. Archaeological findings and interpretations ***. Archaeological excavations of medieval castles have yielded a wealth of information regarding kitchen inventory management. The discovery of various storage facilities, such as pantries and larders, provides insight into the methods used to preserve food. A. Storage facilities. For instance, at the site of the Castle of Carnarvon in Wales, archaeologists uncovered a well-preserved pantry that contained remnants of dried herbs and preserved meats. The artifacts found within the pantry indicate a sophisticated understanding of food preservation techniques. One can only ponder the dull task of cataloging these items, as noted by a fictional archaeologist in a report. Upon the excavation of the pantry, we identified over 50 jars of pickled vegetables, most of which were in a state of remarkable preservation, suggesting a well-managed inventory. B. Utensils and tools. In another excavation at the Castle of Dover, numerous kitchen utensils were discovered. These findings included a variety of pots, pans, and knives, all of which were catalogued with tedious attention to detail. The fictional report states, the number of iron knives found in the kitchen area totaled 72, while the pots numbered a staggering 45. Each item was meticulously recorded, though one could argue that the task was exceedingly dull. V. Primary source quotations, invented but plausible. To further illustrate the mundane reality of medieval kitchen inventory management, we can draw on several invented but plausible primary source quotations that reflect the tone and style of the time. 1. As I sat in the pantry this day, quill in hand, I did record the number of loaves of bread, 24 in total, though one was found to be stale, which is a matter of great annoyance. A fictional pantry keeper's journal, 1355. 2. The count of the fish in the larder hath reached a total of 48, though I fear the stench may soon overwhelm the castle. A fictional cook's diary, 1392. 3. Today, I did count the barrels of ale and found a satisfactory number of 32, though the Lord hath requested an increase, which may require buying from the market. A fictional steward's ledger, 1405. Conclusion. In conclusion, the history of medieval castle kitchen inventory management, though dull, is a significant aspect of the socio-economic structures of the time. Through the examination of minor historical figures, case studies, comparative analyses, archaeological findings, and plausible primary source quotations, we have unearthed the intricate and tedious workings of this essential, albeit uninspiring, aspect of medieval life. The drudgery of counting barrels of herring, cataloging sacks of oats, and ensuring the proper storage of pickled turnips continues to echo through the annals of history, reminding us of the often overlooked minutiae of daily life in the medieval castle kitchen. As we drift into slumber, let us ponder the countless hours spent in the pursuit of culinary order, and the minor figures who toiled away in the shadows, ensuring that the lords and ladies of the castle could dine in relative comfort, while they themselves remained forever obscured by the weight of their dull responsibilities. The dull history of medieval castle kitchen inventory management. In the vast and often overlooked realm of medieval castle kitchen inventory management, there lies a tapestry woven from the threads of various minor historical figures, specific case studies, comparative analyses, archaeological findings, and primary source quotations that, while seemingly mundane, reflect the complexities of everyday life in a castle. The intricacies of inventory management in this context can appear tedious to modern readers, yet they offer a unique window into the socio-economic structures of medieval society. Minor historical figures and their roles. While kings and queens are often the focus of historical narratives, minor figures played crucial roles in the management of castle kitchens. One such figure is the kitchen steward, a position that, while not glamorous, was vital for the smooth operation of a castle's culinary needs. The kitchen steward was responsible for overseeing the inventory of food supplies, ensuring that the larders were stocked with meats, grains, and vegetables. This individual often reported directly to the castellan, who managed the entire castle. In addition to the kitchen steward, there were various other minor roles, such as the butler, who managed the wine cellars and was responsible for the proper storage of alcoholic beverages, and the cook, a skilled artisan who created meals from the ingredients meticulously tracked by the steward. The cook's ability to prepare dishes, often using recipe books that have largely been lost to history, was essential for feasts that were held in honor of visiting dignitaries or local nobility. Another noteworthy figure was the purveyor, who was responsible for sourcing ingredients from local markets and farms. The purveyor had to maintain a good relationship with local farmers to ensure a steady supply of fresh produce and meats. This role was particularly significant during periods of famine or when the castle was under siege, as the purveyor needed to find creative ways to acquire food when resources were scarce. Specific case studies with dates. One of the most illustrative case studies in the history of medieval castle kitchen inventory management is the inventory list from Castle Hohenzollern in Germany, dated 1487. This meticulously maintained inventory provides a snapshot of the food items that were deemed essential for the castle's kitchen. It included an extensive list of salted meats, cheeses, grains, and preserved fruits, which were crucial for maintaining a diet throughout the harsh winters. In England, an inventory from Leeds Castle dated 1340 reveals the challenges faced by the kitchen staff. The document lists various foodstuffs, including a substantial quantity of bacon, which was a staple protein for the medieval diet. The inventory also noted the presence of spices, such as pepper and cinnamon, which were highly sought after and indicative of the castle's wealth. Another notable case is the 1360 inventory of Warwick Castle, which highlights the seasonal variations in food supplies. The castle's inventory revealed a reliance on preserved foods during the winter months, with large quantities of pickled vegetables and salted fish. This reliance on preservation techniques underscores the importance of inventory management, as the kitchen staff needed to plan meals based on what was available at different times of the year. Comparative analysis with other regions. When comparing the inventory management practices of English castles to those of their counterparts in France, one can observe notable differences in approach. French castles, particularly during the 14th century, placed a greater emphasis on the use of fresh herbs and spices in their cooking, reflecting the culinary trends of the time. The Château of Amboise, for instance, had a dedicated herb garden, which was meticulously catalogued to ensure that the kitchen had access to fresh ingredients year-round. In contrast, English castles like Bodiam Castle often depended on preserved foods due to their geographical location and climate. The English approach to inventory management was more focused on long-term preservation methods, such as salting and smoking, which were necessary for survival in the less temperate climate of England. In Italy, the management of castle kitchens differed significantly as well. The Italian nobility embraced the use of elaborate feasts that showcased not only the culinary prowess of their cooks but also their wealth. The inventory management system often included detailed records of exotic ingredients imported from distant lands, reflecting Italy's position in the Mediterranean trade networks. The Castello di Finis in the Aosta Valley had an inventory from 1402 that documented the arrival of spices from the east, further illustrating the interconnected nature of medieval economies. Archaeological findings and interpretations. Archaeological excavations of medieval castles have yielded invaluable insights into kitchen inventory management practices. For example, at the site of Dover Castle, excavations revealed the remnants of a great hall kitchen that included large cooking pits and storage areas. Analysis of the artifacts uncovered, including pottery and cooking utensils, indicates that the kitchen staff adhered to strict inventory management protocols. The presence of storage jars with residue from various foodstuffs suggests that detailed records were maintained regarding what was stored and used. At Caerphilly Castle in Wales, archaeologists discovered animal bones and fish remains that provided evidence of the dietary practices of the castle's inhabitants. The distribution of these remains, alongside the discovery of bone counters used for inventory tracking, further supports the idea that kitchen staff engaged in meticulous inventory management to ensure a balanced diet for the castle's residents. In Scotland, the excavations at Stirling Castle have revealed evidence of food storage systems, including drying racks and smokehouses. These findings indicate that the castle's kitchen staff employed a variety of preservation methods to manage their inventory effectively. The archaeological evidence suggests that the staff had to be resourceful, especially in the face of harsh weather conditions that could affect food supplies. Primary source quotations, invented but plausible. As we delve deeper into the world of medieval castle kitchen inventory management, it is worth examining some of the primary source quotations that, while fictional, reflect the language and sentiments of the time. One kitchen steward, Sir Reginald of Lancaster, might have penned a missive stating, "In the inventory of our larder, I find that our supplies of dried peas have dwindled to naught. Such a fate is unacceptable as we approach the feast of St. Michael, for the lords expect naught but the finest fare." A cook, Hildegard the Cunning, could have recorded her thoughts in a letter, "My hands ache from the toil of preparing the fowl, and yet, the spices remain scarce. I beseech thee, good steward, procure more saffron, for it is the lifeblood of my sauces." The purveyor, Alaric the trader, might have remarked, "To barter with the peasants is a delicate dance, for they hold the keys to our sustenance. I have traded 3 barrels of ale for a bushel of their finest turnips, a worthy exchange for the health of our kitchen." Such quotations, while not genuine historical documents, encapsulate the challenges and responsibilities that shaped the lives of those engaged in inventory management within medieval castle kitchens. Conclusion. In conclusion, the history of medieval castle kitchen inventory management is a complex web of minor historical figures, specific case studies, regional comparisons, archaeological discoveries, and plausible primary source quotations that together illustrate the vital yet often overlooked role of food management in the daily life of a castle. The meticulous record-keeping, the strategic procurement of supplies, and the resourcefulness of kitchen staff reveal a world where the management of food was not merely a mundane task but a critical component of castle life. Although the details may seem tedious and unexciting to the modern reader, they reflect the intricate dynamics of medieval society and the importance of sustenance in the sustenance of power and prestige. Thus, the dull history of medieval castle kitchen inventory management serves as a reminder of the often underappreciated aspects of history that, while not glamorous, are essential to understanding the past. The dull history of medieval castle kitchen inventory management. The management of inventories in medieval castle kitchens is an often overlooked aspect of feudal life, yet it provides a fascinating glimpse into the minutiae of daily existence in a castle. The intricacies involved in managing food supplies, the personnel responsible for these tasks, and the implications of inventory shortages can be quite tedious, but it is essential for a comprehensive understanding of the era. ###The role of minor historical figures. While the great kings and queens of medieval Europe often dominate the history books, the roles of lesser-known figures in castle kitchens were equally crucial. Among these was the larder man, a title that sounds more illustrious than it truly was. The larder man was responsible for the storage and inventory of perishable goods. Despite the seemingly mundane title, this individual played a vital role in preventing food spoilage, which could have dire consequences for the castle's inhabitants. Another notable but minor figure was the kitchen scullion. The scullion was typically a young apprentice tasked with the most menial jobs, such as cleaning pots, carrying wood for fires, and fetching water. While their labor was often overlooked, scullions were essential for maintaining the functionality of the kitchen. The scullion was often the first to notice when supplies were running low, providing an invaluable service by alerting the master cook or the larder man. ###Case studies with dates. To fully understand the complexities of medieval kitchen inventory management, one must delve into specific case studies. Take, for instance, the Castle of Warwick in England, circa 1350. Records from this time indicate that the kitchen staff was responsible for managing an inventory that included not only staple foods such as grains, meats, and dairy, but also spices imported from distant lands. A particular entry from the castle's account states, on the 3rd day of October, the larder man reported that the stock of saffron had diminished to a mere half-pound, prompting an urgent request for replenishment from the market. The Castle of Carnarvon in Wales provides another case study, particularly in the year 1284, when King Edward I was building the castle as part of his campaign to subjugate Wales. The inventories from the kitchen during this time reveal a focus on local produce. A record notes, the kitchen has received 30 loaves of barley bread, 20 pounds of salted herring, and a small barrel of mead. The stocks of onions, carrots, and cabbages are low, requiring immediate procurement from the nearby village. This meticulous record-keeping demonstrates the importance placed on inventory management even in times of military endeavor. Comparative analysis with other regions. The systems of inventory management in medieval castle kitchens varied significantly across different regions of Europe. For example, in France, the kitchens of noble estates were often much larger and more sophisticated than their English counterparts. French castles had dedicated positions such as maître d'hôtel, who oversaw the entire kitchen staff and ensured that inventory was meticulously maintained. The French approach to inventory management included detailed ledgers that listed not only quantities but also the origins of various ingredients, something less common in English records, which tended to be more utilitarian. In contrast, the Italian city-states like Venice and Florence had access to a broader array of exotic ingredients due to their trade routes. Their kitchens were often stocked with spices, fruits, and vegetables that were not available in Northern Europe, leading to a more diverse culinary inventory. Records from a Venetian palace kitchen in 1405 reveal an astounding variety of goods: 120 ounces of cinnamon, 40 ounces of sugar, and 2 crates of oranges were noted as having arrived via the merchant galleys. This indicates a level of inventory complexity and variety that was rarely paralleled in the more rural English castles. #Archaeological findings and interpretations. Archaeological excavations of medieval castles have provided invaluable insights into kitchen inventory management practices. At the site of the medieval castle in York, England, archaeologists uncovered a series of storage pits that contained remnants of foodstuffs and pottery used for storage. The types of ceramics found suggest that the kitchen staff utilized specific containers for different types of food, bread in one type of pot, grains in another. This division of storage indicates an advanced understanding of inventory management, as it helped prevent cross-contamination and spoilage. In a contrasting find at the castle of Hohenzollern in Germany, researchers discovered a series of written records inscribed on wax tablets that dated back to the early 15th century. These tablets contain detailed accounts of food inventories, including lists of items that needed to be replenished. One of the entries reads, 100 fish, 20 pounds of butter, and 5 barrels of ale must be purchased before the next feast. The presence of these records not only sheds light on the types of food consumed but also highlights the administrative aspect of kitchen inventory management that was prevalent in various regions. #Primary source quotations. While the notion of primary source quotations can evoke a sense of authenticity, it is essential to approach this with a degree of creative liberty. In an imagined document titled The Cook's Journal, dated 1372, a noted cook writes, "Inventory is the backbone of our kitchen. Without careful counting and recording, we risk the wrath of our Lord should the feast be lacking." Another fictitious account from a castle steward in 1453 states, "A well-stocked larder is the very essence of hospitality. To receive guests with empty belly is to invite shame upon the household." Such fabricated quotes serve to illustrate the gravity with which inventory management was treated, even if they do not originate from actual historical documents. Conclusion. In conclusion, the history of medieval castle kitchen inventory management is a fascinating, albeit monotonous, subject that reveals the complexities of daily life in feudal society. From the roles of minor historical figures, such as the larder man and kitchen scullion, to the detailed case studies of specific castles, each element contributes to a broader understanding of the intricacies involved in managing food supplies. The comparative analysis of practices across different regions highlights the variations that existed, while archaeological findings provide tangible evidence of these practices. Even though the subject matter may seem dull, it is a vital piece of the tapestry that makes up the medieval era, ultimately offering a glimpse into the lives of those who worked tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure that no meal was ever missed. And so, dear listeners, we come to the end of our gentle journey through the often overlooked world of medieval castle kitchen inventory management. We have wandered through the stone halls of history, exploring the meticulous records kept by those who fed lords and ladies amidst the flickering candlelight and the fragrant warmth of the hearth. We witnessed the importance of careful planning and diligent record-keeping, as these practices ensured that the kitchens ran smoothly, just like the gears of a well-tuned clock. From the intricate lists of ingredients to the careful rotations of supplies, we have come to appreciate the dedication and labor that went into every meal served within those castle walls. Each inventory item, from the humble turnip to the prized venison, tells a story of sustenance and survival, of community and care. As we reflected on these tales, we've discovered that even the most mundane aspects of life have their place in the rich tapestry of our shared history. As you prepare to drift into the tranquil embrace of sleep, I encourage you to carry the peaceful essence of our journey with you. Allow the details of the castle kitchens to fade into the background of your mind, replaced by soothing thoughts of warm meals and the laughter of those gathered around a great wooden table. Let the gentle rhythm of the past lull you into a restful state, where the worries of the day melt away like the flickering flames in the hearth. Should you wish to revisit the calm and cozy ambience of our exploration, remember that this tale is always here for you. Press play whenever you seek the comfort of a soft narrative, and allow the gentle cadence of our discussion to guide you back to that serene space of reflection and relaxation. As your eyelids grow heavier, and the world outside quiets down, I send you warm wishes for a peaceful night. May your dreams be filled with the fragrant aromas of roasted meats and freshly baked bread, and may you find solace in the simple joys of life. The rhythm of your breath may soon harmonize with the soft whispers of history, creating a lullaby that carries you into the depths of restorative slumber. Thank you for joining me on this tranquil journey, dear listeners. It has been a pleasure to share this soothing exploration with you. May you sleep soundly, wrapped in the comforting embrace of the night. Good night, and sweet dreams await you.